is that Germany has become an economic satellite of America's new Cold War with Russia and China and the rest of Eurasia. Germany and other NATO countries have been told to impose trade and investment sanctions on themselves that will outlast today's proxy war in Ukraine. US President Biden and the State Department spokesman have explained that Ukraine is just the beginning, opening arena in a much broader dynamic that's splitting the world into two opposing sets of economic alliances. And this global fracture promises to be a 10 or 20-year struggle to determine whether the world economy is going to be a unipolar, US-centered, dollarized economy, or a multipolar, multi-currency world centered on the Eurasian heartland with mixed public and private economies. President Biden has characterized this split, as I'm sure you know, as being between democracies and autocracy. And that terminology that he's using is typical Orwellian doublespeak. By democracy, what he means is the Western and US financial oligarchies. Their aim is to shift economic planning out of the hands of elected governments to Wall Street and other financial centers that are under US control. US diplomats use the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to demand privatization of the world's infrastructure and for countries to be dependent on US technology, oil, and food exports. So what does he mean by autocracy? It means that countries that seek to govern their own economy and avoid the kind of financialization and privatization that England has done under Thatcherism and America has done under Reaganomics. US rhetoric basically means promoting its own economic growth and living standards and keeping finance and banking as public utilities. So that what basically is at issue is whether economies are going to be planned by banking centers, planned by banking centers, or create financial wealth, or going to create real wealth. Now, I'm sorry, I had a type problem there. Are they going to raise living standards and prosperity by self-reliance, or are they going to rely on US exports and US control? And the point that I've made in Super Imperialism and my other books is that if countries rely on trade that the United States tells them to do, they're going to be in a constant depression. And I believe that Germany and Europe are now being forced into a depression and deindustrialization as a result of the sanctions that the Americans have told them to impose on Russia. And now it looks like Mr. Schultz has gone to China to say to threaten sanctions on China as well. Schultz is so offensive in the statements that he's been making that I think China is going to begin to see that its future does not lie with trade with Europe. But the country that's suffering the most collateral damage in this global fracture is obviously Germany. As Europe's most advanced industrial economy, German steel, chemicals, machinery, automotive, and other goods depend very largely on imports of Russian gas, oil, and metals from aluminum, titanium, palladium. And yet, despite the 2 Nord Stream pipelines built to provide it with low-priced energy, Germany's been told to cut itself off from Russian gas, deindustrialize, pay 3 times as much for American liquid natural gas, and to spend $5 billion building new ports so that after it goes without gas and oil for 3 years, it can begin to buy very expensive US gas and oil. By the way, the United States is freely importing oil from Russia. It has exceptions to the rules. So the U.S. is importing its diesel oil from the Russian oil that's refined in Italy, squeezing Germany and Europe out of diesel fuel. Well, these anti-Russian sanctions make today's new Cold War inherently anti-German. And the US Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has said that Germany should replace this low-price gas with American gas, and I think he's calling it freedom gas. But of course, for the freedom it's bringing to Germany is basically a recession and sort of, let's call it a back to nature movement. Your fuels are going to be cutting down your forests for wood and relying more on coal, especially Polish coal. Well, how can this occur? In all of the textbooks that people use for political theory assume that nations are going to act in their own self-interest. Otherwise, they're satellite economies. They're not in control of their own fate. And Germany is subordinating its industry and its living standards to the dictates of US diplomacy and the self-interest of America's oil and gas sector, which is going to make a killing on exporting to Germany. But Germany's doing this voluntarily. No military force is being used, but there's an ideological belief that the world economy should be run by US Cold War planners. Now,